today we're going to do the lesson for 5.2, defining slope. So first we do have to find the definition, so I want you to put the video on pause and take out your textbook and write down the definition of slope. You'll see that it is the ratio of vertical rise to horizontal run. So last year you did write down this formula, slope equals rise over run. So today we're going to compare two triangles, one with a small rise and a large run, and the other with a large rise and a small run. So we're going to be using slope equals rise over run for each of these situations. The first one has a rise of 2 and a run of 12, which gives us 2 over 12 reduced to 1 over 6. The next one has a rise of 12 and a run of 2, reducing to 6 over 1, which is just 6. What I need to know is what is the relationship between slope and steepness. And you'll see that the larger the ratio, the steeper the slope. For example, 6 is a larger number than 1 over 6, therefore 6 is steeper. When given 2 points that are graphed on a coordinate plane, slope is found by either graphing or using a formula. So what we're going to do for example 1 is we're going to find the slope containing the set of points. So one of the points is 5, 7, and the other is negative 3 and 2. So we're going to first do it by graphing. So the first thing we have to do is graph those 2 points. There's 5, 7. Here is negative 3, 2. We draw a line. So now what I want to do is find the slope of that line, and we can do it by counting our rise and our run. So if we start at the top point, and if we draw a line down and count what our rise is, because we're counting down and it's 5 squares down, its rise is negative 5. We're then going to count from the end of that arrow to the next point, and because it's going in the left direction, it'll have a run of negative 8 because it's 8 squares. So if I calculate my slope using rise over run, I have negative 5 over negative 8, and that reduces to 5 over 8 because 2 negatives makes a positive. Now if I would have started at the lower dot and worked my way to the higher one, here I have a rise of positive 5 because it's in the upward direction, a run of positive 8 because it's into the right direction, and again I calculate slope equals rise over run, and that is 5 over 8. And because they're both positive already, you don't have to do anything with it. But now we're going to use a formula. It's true that slope is equal to rise over run, but that's just the general formula. Slope is actually the difference between the y values, and because there's 2 points, that's where the little 2 and the 1 come in, so it's y2 minus y1 over the run values, which is the difference of the x values, which is x2 minus x1. So if I take the 5, 7, and the negative 3 and 2, I'm going to label the first point the x1, y1, and the second point x2, y2, because I need to know which points go where in that formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now that I know what the x1s, y1s, and x2, y2s are, I can just substitute it into the formula. Slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I end up with 2 minus 7 over negative 3 minus 5, giving me negative 5 over negative 8. 2 negatives make a positive for 5 over 8. I can do the same thing again, but now make the first point the x2, y2, the second point x1, y1, and I write down my formula, slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I substitute those points in, and again I get 5/8. So you'll see in all 4 of these cases, it doesn't matter which way I do it, I get the same answer either way. Each of them giving me a slope of 5 over 8. Now what I want you to do is to describe the slope as you move from one point to the other. So I could say that from one point I could move up 5 and 8 right, or if I start at the other point I would move down 5 and 8 left. So that just describes how to get from one point to the other in terms of slope. The next example, I have 2 points again, -4, 5, and 3, -4. So what I want you to do is to place the video on pause and graph those 2 points and draw the line. So here's the point -4, 5. Here's the point 3, -4. I draw the line. Now I'm going to start counting my slope. So I count downward 9 squares, so that's a rise of -9. Then I count to the right 7 squares, which is a run of +7. I calculate my slope, rise over run, and I have -9 over 7. Starting at the bottom point, I count up +9 to the left, which is in the negative direction of -7. I calculate the slope as well, rise over run, which is 9 over -7. Notice the negative is in the one's in the numerator, the other's in the denominator. That doesn't affect the slope at all, as long as only one of them is negative. Now I'm going to use the formula. So first I've labeled the first point x1, y1, the second point x2, y2. I substitute the numbers in, I get -9 over 7. If I switch the order around and make the first point the x2, y2 and the second point x1, y1, I plug those in and I get slope is 9 over -7. Again, as long as only one of those values is negative, the whole thing is negative and it represents the same line. So now if I asked you, well, what is the relationship, or how would you describe the movement from one point to the other? I could say I could move up 9 and left 7, or move 9 down and 7 to the right. Here's a third example. I want you to plot the 2 points and draw the line. So there's 0.52, there's a 0.5, -6. I draw the line connecting them. And to move from one point to the other, I can count down 8, starting for the top point, moving to the lower point. Now, because it didn't move left or right, that is a run of 0. I substitute those in, I get -8 over 0. Now, because you can't have a 0 in the denominator, I call it an undefined slope. So it's a slope that goes straight up and down. Now, if I happen to start at the lower point and go upward, that's a rise of +8. Run is still 0, and 8 over 0 gives us, again, an undefined slope. And I'm doing the same as for the other examples. I'm labeling the first one x1, y1, the second one x2, y2. I substitute them in and I get -8 over 0, which is undefined. If I did it the other way around, x2, y2 and x1, y1, substitute those in, again I get the same answer. Now I'm showing all of this work, but when you do your homework, you actually only have to do one of them, because both are going to give you the same answer anyways. So I'm just showing that it doesn't matter which one goes first, as long as when you're doing the bottom or the x's, you subtract in the same direction. Now in terms of describing the slope, you could say you can move up 8 or down 8 and then don't move left or right. Next example, I want you to plot those 2 points and draw the line. So there's the points -7, 3. There's 2 and 3. Draw the line. And now to go from one to the other, because there's no upward motion, it's a rise of 0. And to go from the right point to the left one, that is a run of -9, giving us a 0 over -9 as a slope, and 0 divided by any number is 0, so it's a 0 slope. Now if I went from the left point to the right point, rise is still 0, but my run is +9 because it's to the right direction, and I get 0 over +9, again 0 slope. So as before, I'm labeling the points x2, y2, x1, y1, and subtracting in that direction, and I get 0 over -9, meaning 0 slope. If I switch the order of the x1, y1s and the x2, y2s, and I substitute them in, again you get 0 over +9, which again is 0 slope. And to describe the movement from one to the other, I could say I'm not going to move up or down, just 9 left or 9 right, depending on which point you start with. Here I give you a line, and I now want you to find the slope of that line. So all you have to do is, looking at the line, you have to find 2 spots on the grid where the line goes exactly through. So I'm looking through and I find one right there, and then I find another one there, and there could be more than those 2 points, but those just are 2 that work. And now all I have to do is just count my slope. And so here I moved up 5, and then I moved this way to the right, 6, and I just need a rise over run, and I have 5 over 6. If that fraction could be reduced, you would have to do that. Now I want you to draw a line when I give you a point and a slope. So for the point -5 and 4, I plot that point. Now counting from that point, you do your slope of -3 over 4. The -3 is your rise, so you count down 3, and the run is the 4, and because it's positive, you would run to the right 4. You put a dot at the end of that arrow, and you're now ready to draw your line, and you're done. Here's another example. I want you to plot the point. Now here you have to be careful with the slope, because you need a rise over a run, and I have a whole number of 2. You have to make that into a fraction, so that would be 2 over 1. So I want you to do that example for me. So there's the point, -2 and 4. I counted up 2. There's a rise of 2 and a run of 1. I have that new dot, and I draw the line, and that's all I have to do. So for homework, we're going to do page 231, numbers 11 through 43. Thank you for being in my class today.